Yo, how's it going everyone? Entropy here today with another video. This will be part 2 of my tournament experience coverage. So if you haven't seen part 1 and you want to see why I brought certain decks, which clans did I bring, how the tournament is run, go check out the first video and then get back here. So for this video, we will be seeing best of 3 against DDD-DOTE, as we discussed in the last video. DDD-DOTE destroyed 2 other players. One of them was another content creator and very fierce competitor. Definitely, I believe that the fights will be very, very entertaining. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get straight into the first match against DDD-DOTE. DDD-DOTE will be bringing Kagero and Aquaforce. So for this match, I personally thought that Kagero had a better matchup against Aquaforce, so I wanted to bring Kagero first with more control components and being able to tech out PGs. It is definitely a comfortable pick against Transglory, which is quite a popular deck nowadays, and definitely something that I've considered. In addition, even against the original Maelstrom build that I personally was playing in the tournament, having control pieces like Berserk Dragon, being able to retire key 4th attack enablers like Basil, or being able to just smash and destroy your opponent's card advantage with cards like Draconic Overlord, definitely very useful. In addition, the cross-run number going from Draconic Overlord to the end is definitely very useful against 4th attackers, as well as the multi-attacking idea with Aquaforce as well, since most of their units hit 11 or 12k on their first attack at the very most. And so overall, the strategy is get the first W with the Kagero. Since I have to win with, the deck that loses out will be disqualified anyways, I want to make sure that I want to put my best foot forward, beat the Aquaforce, 50% chance of fighting the Aquaforce, beat the Aquaforce, and then go have a good shot against the Kagero. If not, then I'll have a more difficult time with the Aquaforce. So ideally for this match, I want 2-0 with Kagero, and let's see what happens. Started with the first game of this video. This will be me bringing Kagero. Let's see what our opponent DDD-DOTE will bring to the table, either Aquaforce or Kagero, and they brought Aquaforce. Now, I'm super relieved, as discussed just now. I think that Kagero definitely has the better matchup against Aquaforce. You have the cross-run numbers, you have the retires, you also have the card advantage generation that Aquaforce doesn't really. You also have the Sentinel tech with Conroe, so it's definitely really nice. I am considering where I'm going to put my Conroe though. Since I do have the Strike-In, that boost isn't actually going to come into play on my first attacking turn 2, at all anyways, so I might as well keep the booster on the side. I have a bunch of 9k grade 2s which might not be able to hit numbers, so it's just better to have that support in that aspect, especially when I don't have any other grade 1s. Have the blockade in my hand, what is actually decent, especially with a whole mostly grade 2 hand. As you can see right now, I did draw into a PG. What it does is it lets you escalate the game with the Strike-In pseudo break ride. You hit 15k, you get the extra crit, ignoring intercepts, just go face, and sometimes it does work out for you. Opponent goes to 10k. Don't have the counterblast to use Eric, which was another thing to consider. Strike-In being able to damage deny and not let your opponent get their key grade 3 piece. In Transglory case, that would be Transcore or Glory, and in Maelstrom's case, getting the base Maelstrom is such a big game changer. And here we did top deck into Dauntless Drive, which is great. You might as well just get the pseudo break ride and then sit there, intimidate your opponent. Here we call the Berserk Dragon, get rid of the Eric. We saw our opponent check a Diamantes. I think I might as well just get rid of that chance for our opponent to get the Glory or something, since that is what I'm expecting. So we check heals after heals, very lucky. Push the balance from a very fair close fight to a very unfair fight from 0 to 3. Opponent does go into Transcore, so that Eric Snipe could actually make or break the game, disabling our opponent a better chance to search for that Glory break ride turn. Plays Basil, and this is one of the reasons why I don't really like the Basil in this deck, is because you don't really need the 4th attack. It's not like a necessity like in the Maelstrom build. But I do agree that it gives you that extra offensive force and helps you push for game earlier, so then your actual break right turn is much more effective and detrimental to your opponent. With that said, I just want that consistency, and so I do see some controversy with my deck list, but I'm really open to suggestions. I think that it's very playstyle dependent. In this case, you can see that the Basil does help you set up the attack, protecting your intercepts, especially when Aqua Force's card advantage is low, and so you can definitely play Basil as well. Considering just dropping down the Berserk Dragon and just sniping the Basil, because that's exactly what we planned for, and that's exactly what we'll do. There's no reason to not to. Don't really want to commit the Bellicosity, even though I could theoretically unflip. But that means that I'm not guaranteed to deal that extra attack anyway, get that extra attack in anyways, because I can't build the numbers. Vanguard will be 14, Bellicosity with a 5k is 14, so if our opponent just takes 1 damage, we don't hit a trigger, it doesn't really matter. And might as well save the Bellicosity for another day, since that's the only grade 2 unit I have in my hand left. Opponent does heal trigger check with a Glory, so that puts them back to 3. If they're playing a Trans Glory deck, I personally do not recommend you put Glory as a heal trigger, because you do want to keep that in your hand as a combo piece, especially if you're using Eric to search for it. You don't really want to add a heal trigger actively to your hand. You can argue that you want that Limit Break 5 anyways, so if you are not playing that many self-damagers, you can consider putting that heal on Glory and purposely picked up that heal trigger. But personally, I just think that the heal trigger healing damage is just a much bigger swing than whatever crazy skill you have at the moment. So just personal opinion. That is all. We draw into Draconic Overlord, so I think we've seen all 4 heals at this point. Hold the Bellicosity for the intercept prowess, not really the unflip here. Put the power into the Draconic Overlord to guarantee that we will hit that 21k number, so even if our opponent hits a trigger, it doesn't matter. Push them to 5. Next turn I can blockade and win the game. That's the idea. If not, I can always use Draconic Overlord, Caramelast 3 to remove the front row intercepts and then go for a game as well. Here, opponent breaks ride the original Maelstrom. Someone asked me my thoughts on the original Maelstrom with Transcore, and I personally disagree with it. I don't think it's that great synergy. You might as well play a deck that's more focused on an end game finisher. That's what Transcore is intended for, in my personal opinion. So you can play your Glories, and in the future you'll play your Tetra Drive, a multi attacker, a restander that helps you pull out more cards as well as push pressure. I think that type of Vanguard is more suitable for Transcore anyways. So here, opponent didn't get the 4th attack. There's just way too many slots that you have to mix and match because you're building a hybrid Trans Glory Maelstrom deck. Personally, I'm not a big fan of mixing and matching so many different builds. You just don't have the space for it. Here I'm considering what I'm going to break ride. Originally, I wanted to break ride the blockade, but maybe break riding 11 plus 10, 21k is better to guarantee that our opponent's heal trigger wouldn't matter. But here we just go into the blockade, 20k number, put out the booster. We're going to go for a game here. Blockade means that we don't have to use Counterblast to get rid of the intercept. And so we have just, 3 hits with the face without having to waste that Counterblast that we might have needed with Draconic Overlord, and that will be game. So let's check out game 2. We played really, really solidly. Of course, we had the support of that double heal trigger check very early on, and definitely does swing the game for you. But now we're going for Kai versus Kai, Kagero versus Kagero. See what we're going to handle with returning that Dauntless, because we don't need 2 copies really. And unfortunately, we drew into that heal trigger, Draconic Overlord, but that's okay. That's okay. Definitely still early game. Don't know what's going on. Here, because I do have the Dauntless, and because I do go onto Striken into grade 3 first before our opponent, hitting that 21k number with the booster definitely guarantees that I can get 3 damage in. And so that's just why I put the Conroe behind the Vanguard. Opponent does have the SP Conroe, which is super spicy. And the way you can get this, someone was asking on Facebook, is you have to get the trial decks. So that if you are a free-to-play player, just forget about it. Here we are going for the strike-in, again damage denying. There's no reason to give our opponent the chance to use Conroe right now. We're going to catch up with the damage later anyways, so might as well save the 10k vanilla, so we say, for another day, and push that 3 damage turn next turn on our grade 3 turn. When it uses the Steel Dragon Kersey, if I was in that scenario, I might as well just use the Gojo, because you're not going to use it to boost anyways, and you can keep using Gojo while you can't keep using Kersey. So if you are playing Kagero, that is something to consider. Here, as we discussed, we're just going to push for 3 damage. Guaranteed, even if our opponent hits a trigger, we're going to hit 21. So that's good. Hits the heal trigger, that's big, and checks PG. So we put them 0 to 3, exactly the same scenario as last game. Hit the heal trigger on that offensive turn, and then shift the balance of the game. Opponent does play the draw trigger on the Dragonic Overlord, so I am considering what kind of trigger lineup they have. They are also playing the V coupon, V tournament coupon art, so if you are interested in that, you can pick that up. Rides the Dragonic Overlord at the end, Conroe searches for PG, calls out the AK booster, hits numbers, pretty standard here. Velocity, 16k column, boost on flip, very straightforward. And here, I mean, we're really comfortable at 0 damage, just throw us whatever you have. Opponent hits the heal, so the heal is on the Dauntless, which is quite surprising, but I do know that some people really just prefer going straight into the end as well. Uses the end skill. Since they have thinking, that means they can use it, so they have a copy of the end in their hand. So that's something to consider as well when you're playing, because Zero the design team does want to try to automate it as much as possible. You know, when they have a thinking sign, it means that it's actually possible to do it, not just bluffing. So that means that out of the 4 cards, at least one of the cards is at the end, at least one of the cards is a PG, and 2 cards are still unknowns. And when you're playing and you catch these little details, it actually swings the game in your favor as well, because information really is power. So when you're making your final turn plays, you can consider what kind of cards your opponent has, or when you're trying to control your opponent's counterblast, you can know that your opponent does have the end anyways, so maybe it's okay. Maybe it's better to avoid giving them 2 counterblasts sometimes. And in this case, because I know our opponent has the end, I do want them to commit more in order to restand and hit numbers. So I'm retiring the booster, forcing them to place down a booster if they want to hit the Vanguard twice with the Vanguard. And that's just definitely part of the game plan. Unflip as well, same as our opponent. And checking my trigger lineup, I have 5 triggers left, 3 Sentinels left. I think overall there's a lot of grade 2s that we're not seeing. And we played all the grade 2s we have in our hand onto the board. Opponent did commit the Gojo, which is exactly what we wanted. Unfortunately, they still had that copy. So now we can guarantee that our opponent's hand is 1 DN and 1 PG. So that's just something to consider. Again, hits the draw trigger, so that's an unknown as well. Because they have the booster, they are guaranteed to hit twice to our face now, because they can hit 16 and then 23 if they want to. And that's exactly what they'll do. Shows the PG, they get the unflip. What are they gonna do? They're gonna attack with the end only, and that definitely, oh, they hit the heal. That definitely suggests that they also have another the end in their hand that they just drew into. But the thinking sign did not show up, so that means that we know for a fact that they do not have a copy of the end in their hand. Here, we're considering if we should break right or not. But as you can see, the damage difference is quite steep. There isn't a really big incentive to break right now. With that said, we can counterblast 1, discard 3 to attack again, rinse their hand to potentially search for our grade 2. Here we decide to go for make or break, push for game, try to discard, set up a board, just deal damage so we can go for a proper break ride blockade turn next turn. Using Dragonic Overlord, it's still a really solid card, so don't underestimate it. We're just hitting numbers, 16, 27, and then 29. So even if our opponent hits a trigger, a single trigger at any point of the turn, all 3 attacks will go in, push our opponent to 5. We see 2 PG's Sentinels go into the damage zone. Really happy about that. But we only have 2 triggers left in the deck, 1 heal, 1 draw. We only have 1 Sentinel, 1 grade 2 intercept. So if our opponent has a Berserk Dragon or something to retire, that's really dangerous. They didn't, but they had the blockade. So that's unfortunate. Seeing that blockade come down, I was like, damn, I just did that. Now that's just getting back at me. They also have their Dragonic Overlord, so there's that. They have the open counterblast for it anyways, so they're just gonna swipe up my board. And the only thing we can do right now is just pray for a heal trigger. Assuming our opponent plays out their attacks like optimally, they can hit the 16k number. The Overlord line hits 23, so even if we hit a trigger on our 5th damage, we really either our opponent doesn't check a trigger, or we really need that that heal trigger. to survive. So do we hit a trigger here? If we do, then we can survive. If not, we'd really need that heal trigger. And unfortunately, at this point in the game, I think with only 1 in 15 left, it's pretty rare, and that's just how game 2 goes. All right, so let's get into the third game. Unfortunately, we did take the L in the second round. This is honestly one of the unfortunate scenarios that I didn't really want to come across. Aquaforce versus Kagero. I do think that Kagero has an edge in this matchup, so it's hope everything goes well. We do mulligan away the Diamantes. We don't really need that. We can always search with Eric afterwards anyways. We did get lucky, get the Maelstrom. Riding the Mercenary Brave Shooter, 7k body, pretty good. Put the Eric behind the Vanguard since our grade 2s are 8k and 9k base. And our Vanguard, you know, it does help us hit numbers with Maelstrom since it does get the extra power boost. So that's just how it is. Choosing not to ride the Penguin because I do want to use the draw one later. And yeah. So standard draw, nothing much here. See the self-damager. Riding the 9k. Using Eric here, probably trying to search for Diamantes. But here we have Eric. And putting that means that we can use the Penguin on turn 2, which is great. So let's do draw 1. We did draw the Glory. Draw trigger, Diamantes. Opponent checks the end. Here, I think something to consider is Glory. So some people might actually choose to Eric into Glory. Personally, I'm not a really big fan of that move because Glory is a heal trigger, generally speaking. And I think that purposely reducing one possible heal trigger in your deck for that guaranteed cross ride is just, it's generally a minus. You might as well just, keep that heal trigger. If you check that heal trigger and you heal the damage, that's just a much bigger swing, at least in the current state of the game. So that's why I didn't really intentionally add the Glory, even though it is a great cross ride. But it's just better for later. And if I draw into it, then I get to use it. If not, then just one of those things where I might as well just check a heal trigger instead of using its skill or something. Here, our opponent did hit the heal trigger. So going back to 2. And now we know that the DDD is a heal. Again, I don't really know if you want to put DDD as heal because it is one of your ideal ride targets. You either go the end or Dauntless Drive first. So I don't know if you want to mulligan for DDD or anything, but I guess, it's really a preference kind of thing. Personally, my main ride target is Dauntless or the end, and I don't really want to keep the heal trigger in my hand. So Conroe used here, even though they had that Bellicosity last turn, and they didn't really need the boost with Conroe anyways. So if they used it last turn, and especially since they're just searching for Cursey, they could have just, unflipped the damage. And this will come into play later as well, so I just wanted to bring this up. Be careful with your counter chargers, be careful with your counterblast management, because especially in Kagero's case, you have a lot of cards that need counterblast. You have your Conroes, your Berserk Dragons, your Dauntless Drive Break Ride, your The Ends, your Draconic Overlords, ranging from Counterblast 1 to Counterblast 3. And you're playing more than a playset of these cards, right? So you can't actually use all these skills if you don't really manage your Counterblast wisely. So better be careful. Here, our opponent attacks with the Vanguard to the Vanguard with Dauntless first, 19k numbers, to guarantee that they deal 2 damage. I think that's fair. If they attack with Bellicosity first and we hit a damage trigger, and they don't hit a trigger, then that means that the 2 crit is wasted. So this is just a safer play, I suppose. Just culling everything out. Put us to 5, so we have that booster for the Basil to actually hit numbers. Mercenary Brave Shooter, just doing Mercenary Brave Shooter stuff. Great card, 10k beater, really good. And also a solid 7k booster. Maelstrom procs. Helps us, we do hit the draw trigger and then a heal trigger, and that's very, very nice. Puts us back to 3 actually. Maelstrom 4th attack procs, helps us draw 1, remove 1. Especially very, very useful when we saw that our opponent did search for that Cursey with Conroe. That might indicate that our opponent's low on boosters actually, so that's something to note. Just checking our deck, we have 3 PGs left and quite a bit of grade 2s that we're not really seeing, so hopefully we draw into some of the grade 2s later on. Opponent's at 4. Will they consider break riding here? Opponent has 5 cards. I personally think it's too early. Yeah, you want to break ride when you're pushing your opponent close to endgame, because it's not cheap to use it. Here, the Berserk Dragon retire is a bit iffy in my opinion, because if you retire the grade 2 Basil, you still have a clear shot at the Mercenary Brave Shooter, and in a very lucky circumstance where you hit 2 triggers and the opponent doesn't, then the Berserk Dragon can actually swing face for 19 to 16, and that puts your opponent to 5, and that's really good spot where you want your opponent to be at when you want to do your break ride turn, especially since your opponent is playing Maelstrom anyways. And so that means that even when they're at 4 damage, if they have the Maelstrom and the Soul, the Glory Maelstrom can proc anyways. So damage denying 5 doesn't really play a big role in this matchup. So yeah, if I was the Kagero player, I'd probably just snipe the Basil, so you have that chance to swing an additional attack to face. But the Mercenary Brave Shooter retire isn't that bad anyways. Here, if our opponent doesn't hit a damage trigger for the 5th damage, it means that we have 2 clear shots to face, and that's exactly what we have. Hopefully they don't have 2 PG, and that's the end of the game. No triggers here. Unfortunately, our opponent does have that PG, so we do just draw. The good thing is that we did draw into one of the 3 PGs that we really needed, and since we don't have an intercept on our board, this definitely does come in handy. Definitely could be the make or break between surviving this turn or not. Opponent draws, they have 5 cards, so let's just see what they're gonna do. Break right into the end. So they do have that counterblast 1, discard 3 to restand opportunity. 21k hits numbers, definitely. Even if our Vanguard hits the trigger, we'll be 21. So that 21 hits 21 twice with that break ride. So the 2 PGs will actually come into really big save. And yeah, opponent's Draconic Overlord can't use the counterblast 3 since they don't have that 3 counterblast. It doesn't really matter here because we don't have a grade 2 intercepts at all. But if they really needed to clean it up, they don't have the choice. They could have had the choice if they used the Conroe earlier. So that is, again, something to consider. Counterblast management is key, and knowing how to position your Conroes, knowing how to position your on flippers is definitely very important. Here, just dumping everything for the restand, swinging for game. And here, what is our opponent going to swing to? Swinging to the Maelstrom, actually, which is quite surprising. But yeah, I asked Beta Omkin afterwards, like, why did you swing rearguard? And they just said their finger slipped. In this case, since we do know that we have an extra PG, it didn't really matter. But in that case, if we didn't have the PG, then it would have been big, right? So definitely be careful when you're playing. I guess finger slips do happen, and just be careful. Here we're just gonna swing face. Opponent did get the 6 damage heal, but luckily we do have 4th attacks. Luckily, Maelstrom's Limber Break grants it +5. So we do hit the number. Don't think our opponent has a great chance at hitting any heals left. We hit a heal. Perfect. And that will be game. Alright, so I'm doing this post-production because I totally forgot about it again. But without further ado, I would like to just give a special shout out to everyone who acknowledged our boy Knight of Entropy right here. He is going to be a great Link Joker unit. It is a vanilla, but front row lock is pretty good. So remember Knight of Entropy just because he has the same name as the channel. And so without further ado, thank you so much to Getsuga Tensho. Thank you so much to Raphael Tan. Thank you so much Peppermint Bailey. And I have no idea. Literally, there's a user called I have no idea. So not that I don't have any ideas, but there you go. Thank you so much for everyone who participated. Be on the lookout for future little quizzes here and there, little games. In the future, it won't just be a shout out. It could be a shout out, but there could be more. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Watch the whole video. Hopefully you pick up on little Easter eggs here and there, so you can qualify for any future rewards. All right, so thank you so much, and let's jump into the outro. So that will be all for part 2 of my tournament run. Look forward to part 3, which should come very closely to this release. I hope you're all enjoying it so far. Honestly, I didn't expect people to actually enjoy it that much because, well, well, I did do these tournament runs previously, but not a lot of traction and not a lot of views. So I'm glad you all appreciate the commentary. Definitely took more time to kind of explain the plays. Instead of speeding through it like 8 times speed or 20 times speed, it's 2 times speed. So we still have a little bit of breathing space, so you can still consider the plays, as well as talk a little bit about the tactics and strategies and whatnot. So I guess with that said, I hope you comment down below, let me know which was your favorite fight from this video. Alright, so I guess that's it for this part. Look forward to part 3. If you liked the video, remember to like it. If you haven't subscribed already, remember to subscribe, and I will see you all soon. Bye.